Hello, Archeans. When I did that 2-minute philosopher, one of my commenters, Jim, who's a friend of mine on the Ark, asked a question about my chemistry set, so I thought I'd talk a little bit about that now. I started my chemistry set, I think in around 1965 when I was 9 years old. I started building my chemistry set. And at the time, you could get, even at hobby shops, you could get some pretty good chemistry sets. I mean, they had a Bunsen burner and enough different types of chemicals, some of them even kind of, I guess you would call kind of semi-dangerous. You could actually build or concoct small explosions if you really wanted to at the time, which I'll get into that later, how I ended up making gunpowder. But yeah, I had a Chemcraft, I think it was, or something like that, or a Gilbert's, or one of each. The medium and the big model, the trifold model, where it's 3 pieces of metal that swing out on hinges like doors. And that was the basic starting point of my chemistry set. Well, naturally, having a father that's a contract worker for NASA gives you many possibilities of enhancing your chemistry set. And I found out later, because I know some of the stuff wasn't the kind of stuff he even used, and I asked him later on when I was older where he got this stuff, and since he was usually in the upper levels of management when he was an electrical design engineer, he didn't really so much work on projects as much as supervise and move them along, but he also was in contact with the suppliers of the stuff. So the companies that would supply chemicals and electronics and any kind of labware and stuff like that, he knew them very well. In fact, I put 2 and 2 together later and found out that these friends of his that were always taking us out to eat when I was younger and lived in Ohio were not so much friends as people that he dealt with buying supplies and chemicals. So for my 9-year Christmas present, I got better lab equipment than some professional labs get. And what he would do is the suppliers that would take him out to dinner, he would just say, well, you know, I got some different ideas to try stuff, and they would be more than willing to give him whatever it takes because they're in the hopes that he'd come up with some reason to buy more stuff from them. So it's always easy at the time. Now, I don't know now with conflict of interest laws and stuff like that if people in management can do that nowadays, but in the 60s and 70s, that was a very common thing that your suppliers, anytime you would ask them for anything, if you bought millions of dollars a year of chemicals and equipment, if you asked them for anything, they basically just brought it and gave it to you because they were hoping you'd come up with an idea to use it to buy stuff from them. So it was all about making money, which, you know, that's what capitalism's all about. So yeah, when I was 9 years old, I got a complete distillery set up, which my dad actually helped me put together, and I made some moonshine. Not even enough to really have a sip. I think it was a matter of maybe a few little milliliters of it just to say that I made it. And a complete vacuum chamber. I built my own vacuum chamber, which I really didn't use that so much, but the equipment that I really liked, and when I did it, it was really fun, was my hydrolysis equipment. I manufactured hydrogen and oxygen by electrolysis of water, and got a real neat surprise when I lit a match underneath the flask where the hydrogen was. Boy, it sure made a nice little kind of woof sound. And my friends at grade school, I would talk about some of this stuff, and they kind of half believed me that I had all this equipment and was doing all this stuff. So my one friend in grade school said, could you make gunpowder? So I thought, yeah, that's not really hard to make. I mean, just 3 basic ingredients. So I made up a batch of gunpowder and actually brought into school. I think I wrapped it in a piece of paper or something, brought about 2 teaspoons of it into school and gave it to him, which probably wasn't a real smart thing to do, but he took it home and took it somewhere, maybe out in the backyard or somewhere, and lit it, and he was rather impressed. It was real gunpowder. It didn't blow up, but it flashed because it was, well, the way I made it, I didn't make it as potent enough to really make an explosion. But yeah, nowadays chemistry sets are pretty lame when you go to your basic Toys R Us and stuff like that. They won't even let kids have a basic alcohol burner, which used to be like standard equipment in the chemistry labs of the day when I was a kid, along with the dangerous chemicals. In fact, you could even resupply it at the time. You could go to a hobby store, and for the regular Gilberts and the Chemcraft chemistry sets, you could buy resupplies of all the little bottles of chemicals. I mean, even stuff like potassium permanganate and stuff like that, which is not really the safest thing in the world. But on the other hand, if we do play it so safe that we don't let our kids try different things, then where's the knowledge going to be gained too? Now, I can see the fact that probably with a lot of chemistry sets, they just don't want to pay the liability cost of it, of having to deal with things like if they give them an alcohol burner, they're going to, obviously somebody somewhere is going to spill it and light a room on fire or light the house on fire or somebody get injured. So it may be just the fact that the insurance is so costly, but there is actually, if you're willing to spend over $200, there still is a decent chemistry set on the market. And although like anything else, it would be very wise of any parent to exercise a great deal of supervision, because this is a cool chemistry set that gives you the alcohol burner and enough stuff to actually do some interesting experiments and not just make pretty colors and pretty smells, but it's something you could actually learn with. So I'll put the link to that either right with this video or in the comments, either way. But between the ages of, probably when I was using the chemistry set most, was probably between the ages of 9 and 13. I think by the time I was 14 and we moved from Ohio out to Chicago, I still kept most all of my stuff. In fact, probably somewhere around, I even have a few things left from my chemistry sets because some of the equipment was very expensive. But I pretty much was over it by the time I was 14 and switched to electronics. Then I wanted to build my own amplifiers and my own radio receivers. I started out just with simple radio receivers, putting the circuits together, and then pretty much took it from there. In fact, a great deal of my money that I earned from mowing grass and stuff like that when I was 14 went into buying issues of Popular Electronics and Popular Mechanics and things like that that would give you ideas of stuff to build for yourself rather than buy it. So anyway, that's my answer to you, Jim, about my childhood chemistry set. And anybody else have any questions or want me to talk about anything, just let me know. No problem at all.